Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, Russia recently made an announcement that, if true, could change everything. And by everything, I mean the world geopolitical power structure, the United States military's ability to project power across the world, the makeup of global energy markets, the placement of world financial centers, almost everything that matters in the interaction between global nations. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about this. This is a tweet from Wall Street Silver. It says Russia confirms that they are launching a BRICS currency backed by gold. And we've talked about this in the past. We speculated that this was coming in August. It says here, it will be on the agenda at the BRICS South Africa meeting in August. Many other countries have applied to join BRICS. De-dollarization is accelerating. So this is a short video that Russia put out. I want to play this so that you can hear for yourself. Then we're going to discuss. So I'm going to hit mute and hopefully not mess it up like sometimes I do. So we'll see how this works out.
The BRICS group is set to introduce a new currency backed by gold, in contrast to the credit-backed US dollar, with countries lining up to join the growing initiative.
The BRICS countries are planning to introduce a new trading currency which will be backed by gold. More and more countries recently expressed desire to join BRICS.
The decision comes a month ahead of scheduled Alliance Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. 41 countries have since shown their interest in BRICS membership and its new currency implementation. Russia's foreign ministry has stated that if African states show enthusiasm, the group's expansion may also be on a Russia-Africa summit's agenda in the end of July. As of now, the BRICS group remains comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Former statistician general of South Africa, Pali Lehola, says the gold-backed currency will facilitate the advancement of developing countries.
So we'll stop right there, guys. What does this all mean if this actually happens? And there's one caveat involved with this when I say, well, this could change everything. What do I mean by could? Well, if this is true, this currency must be convertible into gold for it to have the impact that many people believe that it will have. And we've talked about this some in past videos where we talked about Jim Rickards came out and said that this could be a shock to the global financial system, the biggest event since Nixon closed the gold window in 1971. So we know people have been talking about this, but guys, they can come out and say it's gold backed all they want. But if it's not convertible, then it makes no difference, meaning that currency, either you and I can go and exchange it for physical gold, or other nations can go and trade it for physical gold, much like prior to Nixon closing the gold window. That was how the world monetary system operated under Bretton Woods II agreement, which meant that people could take dollars, or other nations, I should say, could take dollars to the United States and trade them in exchange for a specific amount of physical gold. Well, the United States printed too many dollars, they printed too many claims on that gold, and France called their bluff and started saying, send us the gold. And the United States, looking at what was happening, thought, we're going to run out of gold. So President Nixon, this was August 15th, 1971, he temporarily suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. So here we are, we're coming up on the 52nd anniversary of that temporary suspension. So again, if a real gold-backed currency is going to be issued by BRICS, it needs to be convertible on demand by either individuals, nations, or both. I think if they do roll that out, it's most likely to be more like the Bretton Woods II system where nations can convert that. We're going to talk about why that is later on, but I want to look at, again, what does this mean? And I want to take a look at this article here. This is by Quoth the Raven's Fringe Finance. And it says the gold standard is back, BRICS to introduce gold-backed reserve currency. So they have a good overview of what this may mean. And then we're going to talk about some scenarios of what could happen and how it impacts the world. He says, remember back when the Russia-Ukraine war had just started and I predicted that Russia and China would launch their own gold-backed currency. At the time, this idea sounded completely foreign, and I was ridiculed for bringing it up. Today, it just became reality. Well, maybe. We'll see. Again, we'll see. 41 plus countries look like they could be returning to a gold standard. The images plastered all over RT this weekend had headlines like New Money, New World, and Gold Standard will be of great benefit to strengthening new single currency. The official announcement is expected to be made during the BRICS summit in August in South Africa, Kitco reported over the weekend. And again, we talked about this before. This is August 22nd through 24th in South Africa. The leaders of all of these BRICS nations, so that includes President Xi in China, President Putin from Russia, all the bigwigs will be there, so this would be the time to release this type of news if that's what you plan to do. And if you remember, back in March, President Xi visited Moscow, and when he was leaving, he told Putin that they were going to make change, the type of change that only happens every 100 years. And at the time, we speculated on what that may be, because there's no doubt that they put that out for a reason. That wasn't a microphone moment that was caught by a journalist. They did that intentionally to send a message to other nations in the world and to the United States of what was coming. And I believe what happened a little over 100 years ago, well, we moved from a world where we had a global empire located in the United Kingdom. We had the British Empire, and everyone said, well, the sun never sets on the British Empire. And it was the pound sterling that was the world's reserve currency, backed by gold, convertible into gold. And that ran the world financial system. Following World War I, we saw that power shift away toward the United States, as we saw many countries were so indebted following World War I, they could no longer back their currencies with gold. The losing powers, Austria, Hungary, Germany, went into hyperinflation because their war debts were so large. And so we saw this power shift and the monetary system shift from the UK as the center of global finance to the United States as the center of global finance. And I believe that's what they were referencing when they made that comment, that we're going to see that type of change happen soon. So we will see. Let's go back to this article. It says, at first glance, a new transaction unit backed by gold sounds like good money. And it could be, first and foremost, a major challenge to the US dollar's hegemony, Thorsten Pollett, chief economist at Degussa, said. He continued, for making the new currency as good as gold, a truly sound currency, it must be convertible into gold on demand. And that's what we've been saying. He says, I'm not sure whether this is what Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have in mind. Using gold as money, the unit of account would be a true game changer, no doubt about it. It could lead to a sharp devaluation of many fiat currencies vis-a-vis the yellow metal, including the BRICS fiat currencies. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And it could catapult up goods prices in terms of fiat currencies. It could be a shock to the global fiat money system. I'm not sure that this is what the BRICS wish to achieve. And I would disagree with him there. I would say that may be exactly what they want to achieve. No doubt they understand how intertwined the global economy is and that they can't attack the US economy, the Japanese economy, all these Western fiat currencies backed economies, and not impact their own economies. I think they understand that. They understand that their own fiat currencies will drop relative to gold. But this is about getting out from under the thumb of the US dollar system and the US ability to weaponize the dollar, as we saw after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where Russia was kicked out of the SWIFT system. Russia had its dollar reserves frozen throughout the Western financial system. They saw all of these penalties imposed upon them, and these other nations looked and said, what happens if we do something that the United States doesn't like? I don't like this system. I thought these dollar reserves were ours. But no, they're not. They can be turned off. The United States can freeze them. So we need some sort of neutral asset. And while we've talked about the dollar as the world's reserve currency, I don't think all this means the dollar is going away. That's not what's going to happen. It may not even mean as a reserve currency that as a fiat currency that the dollar's reserve status goes away. But I think what it does mean is that the U.S. Treasury, as a reserve asset for many of these central banks all over the world, will go away. We're already seeing it go away as starting last year, again, following the war in Ukraine, 2022, we saw the largest accumulation of gold by central banks around the world since the late 1960s, right before we saw Nixon close that gold window, ending the Bretton Woods II agreement, so ending that era of global monetary policy and beginning a new era based on the fiat dollar. Later, the United States was able to broker a deal with Saudi Arabia where they offered military protection to the Saudi family in exchange for OPEC trading oil only in dollars, and that's known as the petrodollar system. That's what we've been under ever since. Now, that's been starting to break down over the last couple of years, and we've covered that when it's happened, when news stories have come up about that. But we're coming to the end of this current monetary system, and a new one will come into place because, as we've covered, there are many problems with the Western financial system. It's going to come to a head soon. We're either going to see a massive global depression and a deflationary spiral if they try to protect the value of the dollar, or we're going to see more printing of dollars and we're going to see hyperinflation of not just dollars, but all fiat currencies. And so the BRICS nations no doubt see all of this. They also have been tired of being under the financial repression that's put upon them by the US and these sanctions. They also, I'm sure, are tired of trading real things like oil and corn and wheat, natural gas for fiat dollars that can be devalued and US treasuries that are paying interest rates below the rate of inflation. So their purchasing power is going down. So they're looking at that and saying, this isn't such a good deal. Maybe we should change this. And so, while as this statement says, it would hurt the BRICS countries, it would devalue their fiat currencies as well, we may see that they're willing to go through that pain and suffering for several reasons. First of all, when you look at India and China and even Russia, a large portion of their population, of their citizenry, has gold. If you go to India, any wedding in India, people give gifts of gold to each other. So gold is plentiful compared to individual gold holdings in the Western fiat world. And so it would instantly raise the value in fiat terms of those gold holdings and increase the wealth of the citizenry of those countries, making them more resilient. So there are benefits to this. So let's just go through a little bit of a thought exercise on how this could happen, because the details aren't out yet. We have Russia making this statement. What does it actually mean? What's going to happen in August? We're going to have to wait and see what actually happens. But here's what they could do. So they could issue a digital currency, we'll just call it the BRICS currency. They put it out, they make it a distributed ledger digital currency similar to Bitcoin, but centrally controlled. But it has this digital ledger that's open to the world so that everyone can see the transactions that are taking place. And then each nation pledges a certain amount of gold to a depository, let's say in Singapore, where people have trust. Singapore is much like Switzerland 100 years ago. They're a trusted source of a safe haven for wealth. So if they store the gold in Singapore, and then each one of those gold bars has an association with gold, on the blockchain, and then they use the blockchain for people to be able to know where this gold is going, who it belongs to, then you could simply make it convertible. If someone went and turned in those BRICS digital currency, they could get the physical gold in return. So if they made this for the nations to be able to do that, similar to Bretton Woods 2, or nations could put gold in and get the digital currency out. This would make it very easy. Unlike if you're trying to trade physical gold and you're sending it back and forth, there's all sorts of transaction costs associated with that, and it becomes very burdensome. But if you simply trade this on a distributed ledger using the blockchain, then you don't have to do that. You don't have to ship the gold from one place to another. As long as you know that at any given moment, if you want it, you can go get it. So as long as nations believe that, then this currency will have a defined value based on whatever unit they use as measured in gold. And so why does this matter? Well, they could just simply do that. They don't have to replace all of their national currencies with this BRICS currency. They just create a currency that can be converted into gold and then let the free market take it from there. And I think what you would find is that just as central banks last year bought up more gold than they had since the 1960s, they would start to accumulate this BRICS currency because it's easier to hold that. There's more convenience with that than in storing the gold and passing the gold back and forth when they want to spend it. But what else could it do? Well, they could also take it a step further, and they could say, well, just like the petrodollar, when the United States had an agreement with OPEC that oil would only be traded in dollars, and that underpinned demand for dollars all around the world and led to the US dollar having the foothold as this world's reserve currency. Now, what if they said, well, all of our commodities, all the BRICS nations from now on, we're going to trade our commodities, we're going to sell them only for BRICS currency. Or what if they said, if you're in the BRICS alliance, you can buy with whatever means you want. You can use your own fiat currency. But if you're outside of the BRICS nations, you have to use the BRICS currency. Again, there would become less reason for having dollars, more reason for having the BRICS currency. And you would see dollars flood back to the United States, raising inflation. Again, you would see a devaluation of all fiat currencies relative to gold. But the Western financial system is predicated on this fiat currency model. So this shifts all the power, guys, eastward toward the BRICS alliance. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. I certainly could be wrong, but here's how I see it. Here's what I know for certain. But regardless of what they announce later on, here's what I know. Gold cannot be printed. Governments can print fiat currencies into oblivion, and history tells us that that's exactly what they'll do. But gold can't be printed. It has to be painstakingly mined. Energy has to be used to dig it up out of the ground, and there's a limited quantity available of it. So you can't just simply double your gold holdings with the snap of a finger, but you can double the amount of fiat currency, the number of dollars, the number of yen, the number of euros, with the push of a button on a computer. All the central banks can do that. So gold can't be printed. Now think about, what is the U.S., what is the number one export of the U.S.? Well, it's dollars. It's U.S. dollars, U.S. financial instruments, and U.S. financial derivatives to the rest of the world. And what are the BRICS nations exporting? Well, they're exporting real things: oil, natural gas, commodities, finished goods manufactured in China and other places. So the United States is sending over pieces of paper or ones and zeros on a ledger. And in exchange, these other nations are providing real stuff. And they're looking at that and saying, this doesn't make any sense. Maybe we want something of tangible value. We want something real in exchange for the real thing we're providing to you. Makes sense that they would do that. Now, if they do that, and the United States is forced to acquire whatever imports they bring into the country from the BRICS nations by acquiring BRICS currency first and exchanging that, well, no longer can the U.S. simply print dollars in exchange for the energy it needs. No longer can it print dollars to deficit spend as it did in the past. And if the United States can't print dollars to get the energy it needs, to deficit spend, to do what it needs to do, the United States can't fund its military. It can't project power on a global basis. It can't have hundreds of bases all over the world. It won't be able to afford them. It would have to pay for those things in real gold. They would have to acquire real gold first and exchange a real item for another real item. And they're going to find that impossible to do under the current situation. So again, I can't understate, if these parameters we've talked about, it, this is how they roll this out, then we will see a major epic change in the geopolitical landscape and financial markets. We're going to see the United States wane as a superpower. We could see the United States say, no, you're not going to do this, and go to war with the BRICS nations. We don't know. We don't know how this is going to play out. But make no doubt about it, we know the Bible tells us there's an absence when it comes to talk of the United States of America in end times Bible prophecy. There's no mention of the United States. And so we know the superpower status the United States enjoys right now has to disappear. It has to go away. U.S. power has to wane in the end times. Now, there are a number of reasons I believe that will happen. You know, we have a cultural decay. We have spiritual decay. We have all of this terrible financial system that doesn't really need this to come along in order to topple it over. It's in the middle of breaking all on its own. But this would just be one more catalyst. I believe ultimately it will be the rapture that is the final nail in the coffin of the United States as a global superpower. But in the interim, we could see this happen and create a multipolar world of multiple powers equal in nature, rather than this one superpower world that we've lived in since the end of the Cold War. So guys, we'll see how this all plays out. But again, the world is changing. And now this doesn't mean that Russia and China will rule the world by any means. We know that China has its own issues. They have a property bubble that has burst. They have an aging population, a declining population. They have their own problems. I don't think there's any mention of China in Bible prophecy either. And Russia, we know, will ascend as a power, But Ezekiel 38 and 39 tells us that God will send his wrath down upon those nations and destroy them, destroy Russia and the Gog of Magog nations when they invade Israel. So we know Russia's power will wane in the end times as well. So we're seeing the setup for this world that's going to change dramatically soon and may end up erupting into war. And precisely as Revelation 6 tells us, there will be another global war. Many people say there's no chance of a World War III. Revelation 6 tells us that's not true, that there will be another world war. And it will end with one power conquering the globe and one man, the Antichrist, ruling that power. So, guys, all of this tells us we may very well be seeing the stage set for these things to play out. We know the times in which we live. We're seeing the signs that Jesus and the prophets said to look for that indicate that the time is near. Jesus said, when you begin to see all these things happen, look up. Your salvation is near. He said, when you see all these things begin to happen, I'm right at the door. So we know Jesus is coming back, guys. He could come back at any moment. That is the good news. That's where our focus should be, not on bad news of what could or couldn't happen as a result of all this. But we talk about these things precisely because they point to Jesus. Revelation 19:10 tells us the essence of all prophecy is to give a clear witness for Jesus. And that's what we're doing, guys. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father except through him. While we were still sinners, and we're all sinners, we're born that way, Jesus came down, he lived a perfect life, and he died on the cross, shed his blood, so that we could have forgiveness of our sins and be reconciled with God. That is the good news, guys. Make sure you're spreading it to everybody that you can with whatever time we have left. In the meantime, leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. When you do that, these videos get out to more people who may hear about the hope they can have in Jesus Christ, that he will change their lives. So make sure to do that, and God willing, I'll see you next time. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.